welcome back to David Weeks, who is sharing his story of of really a lot of different forms of abuse, but we are into the part where he has been raped by a 39-year-old when he was 13, someone that he met online when he was trying to figure out what sex was, even though he had started puberty at age 7. At 13, he still didn't really know, and mom thought it was a good idea for him to be sitting there watching a rated R movie with her where sex was happening, and then he went on his own, 'cause never was there a talk, and looked up, "What's a sex tape? What does that mean exactly? I'm seeing things I don't exactly know," because a lot of your life was spent in isolation. And so even though you must have had friends at school and maybe they talked about certain things about sex, you really were uneducated. And so when you went online and you started to chat with this person, did you know he was 39?
Yes, I did know he was 39. Um,
You knew he was an adult,
yes, and from my point of view, I thought, "Oh, he must be safe because, he's an adult."
right?
Um,
And you were looking for love.
and I was
You
looking for love.
necessarily sex,
Yeah.
that's not what you were looking for, you were just looking for someone to see you.
I was just looking for someone to tell me it is okay to feel what you're feeling right now. I was gay. I was completely alienated at school. I couldn't talk about my feelings with, you know, anyone. I couldn't, you know act on crushes I had and, flirt with boys because I would have gotten beaten up at school. And so I not only was alone, I was, alone, like, in every aspect you could think of. And I felt like an alien, like I was some subspecies of human at times. And I, she was also gay and I felt understood because I could talk to someone about, being gay and what that's like. And, oh, I'm not the only one. So I feel better about myself. And then he goes and rapes me. And not only was this a one off, it was not a one off. It happened for 5 years straight for every week for 5 years.
And about 3 times a week, you would also one of those times might have been him, but then there were his friends, there were motel rooms,
Yeah.
there was long periods of rape, in those and your stepfather and your mother don't even know
No,
that you're gone from the house.
no.
You're sneaking out, being picked up, taken to a motel. Here's a new friend. Now he's gonna rape you for 5 or 6 hours
Yeah.
until morning, until we gotta get you back home.
And I know like there's gonna
Right.
yeah. And I know there's gonna be some listeners and they're gonna and be like, "Well, you were sneaking out. What do you think was gonna happen?" But, like, it's so easy to, to play a story backwards, but when you play it from start to finish, it is a lot harder, and being in that moment
Oh, yeah.
no, especially at that young age, you're so naive. You you don't you don't see the evils in the world that an adult sees, and so I
And you're starving for affection,
yeah,
attention, to be noticed, to be seen. Did you ever feel seen in your childhood?
no, not once, like my, parents and my family, they would have gatherings and I would be in the living room playing video games. Like no one paid attention to me. And, my uncle would talk to his wife, my sisters would talk to each other, and then, my grandma would talk to her friend, and then, my parents talked to each other and no one really paid attention to me. And anytime, I tried to make conversation, it was like, you're so weird. You sound just like your father. Like, and, like, I would laugh, and they would just, like, give me, like, this look, um, of, "What are you doing?" And so, like, it didn't even feel safe being seen. And so at times, I didn't even wanna be seen, I just wanted to be left alone and play video games, and you know what? Like, that's how I got through my childhood was just dissociating in video games and pretending I was in a world where I wasn't.
Yeah, you were in an alternate universe,
Yeah.
and you kept quiet, and nobody in your immediate, family, no one knows that you have, these feelings. You haven't talked to anybody about that. I mean, were you scared? I'm assuming you were probably scared that that would be totally unacceptable to your military stepdad.
Yes. Um, I came out to my mom. So, um, what happened first though is, um, I did have another significant event in my life where, so now I'm 14. Um, my
Were you eating a lot at that time? Because that's where we kinda left off in
Not really.
our last, conversation.
So I
Not yet.
Not really.
Okay.
Um, I was maybe eating 1,500 calories, but I was burning about twice that much. I swam, 2 miles every day, and then I worked out on top of that. And so I was what they called husky growing up. And so, I was told flat out by mom, "You need to go on a diet." And I was put on MyFitnessPal, and, um, basically it tracks all of your caloric intake, your nutrients, the exercise you do, and it almost became a game to me about, how much less I can intake, how much less sugar, calories, carbs, protein I can intake, and, um, to the point where, I start to be developing fear foods because I'm like, "Oh, like, if I eat this, it'll make me overweight, and then people won't like me, and then I won't be liked anymore, so I'm not gonna eat this." And so, um, I developed anorexia nervosa. Um, my mom basically desecrated my body, and she would make fun of my hair, the way my hair looked. She would make fun of the way my voice sounded. She said, like, "You sound like Squidward on SpongeBob," or, like, "When you laugh, you sound just like your father." And my thighs were too big. I had thunder thighs, and, you know, name a part of my body, she made fun of it. So I would even wear clothes to school that I felt comfortable in, and I would get comments in at school, come home, and my mom would be like, "What the hell do you have on?" And I'm like, people were telling me at school I look good, and she'd be like, "Well, they're lying to you because you look horrendous." And, you know, it became like this like joke where like I wore white pants, and like the whole family now was making fun of me that I wore white pants. And yeah, um, I I ended up developing body dysmorphia. Um, where
And that's where you actually see your body differently than it actually is.
Yes. So
If you look in the mirror, it
yeah,
looks different than it actually is.
yes, and I have OCD on top of that, and it's a common comorbidity. I can't really pronounce it, but that it's people who have OCD are more likely to develop these disorders. Um, and because I was raised in an abusive situation, it was just like a perfect storm. And I, you know, I would look in the mirror, even though I haven't lost weight or gained weight, my thighs would look bigger, or my thighs would look smaller, or my face looked weird, or my hair wasn't perfect. I would do my hair in the bathroom for almost 2 hours sometimes because my OCD was just that off the charts. And if my hair didn't look perfect, I would, like, die inside. Like, it's, like, that feeling you can't really describe, but a very, very uncomfortable feeling. Um, and so
This was during those ages from 13 to 18 while you were being raped
yes,
on a regular basis, several times a week, different men, different hotels, but the main guy is the 39-year-old
yes,
that you found online who you thought was going to be your friend and going to let you talk about what it felt like to be gay and have somebody to talk to. And instead, he ends up taking you to his home, undresses you, rapes you for the first time.
yes,
It was incredibly painful, but it continued with him for 5 years and other friends that he would basically traffic you to.
Yes.
And all of this eating disorder is this and the swim team, this is all happening
At the same
at
time.
the same time.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm being abused literally at both spectrums at the same time. Um, and there was a long period of time where I would be going through anhedonia where like I just did not feel happy at all. I felt completely like a robot. Um, I um like my grandfather on my mom passes on my dad's side passes away. So I lost both grandfathers. I didn't get to say bye to that one because, I was forbid like they were taken away from me. And the family dog dies that year. And I literally was so numb, so riddled with pain. I wanted the pain to stop. I couldn't take it anymore. Um, I found some pills in my backpack and I tried overdosing and killing myself. I wrote a suicide letter that basically described the treatment I was receiving. Um, and I eventually just like told myself, like, I don't want to die yet. Like, I don't want to die. And so I told my mom, I just went into the bag and she was like, what the hell was in the bag? And I was like, I just like pills. And so my stepfather now is like trying to like fight me while I just try to overdose myself and trying to, so I'm scared out of my mind. I grab a purse and like, whack him in the head because he's chasing me. And eventually, I go to the psych ward. I am cried so much to the point my face is now like swollen. Um, I was in the psych ward for a week and my mom told me, your father, your stepfather doesn't want to come see you. And I had to convince him to come see you. Like the family's not happy with you. And the social worker there asked me if I was being abused at home. And I was too scared to say, yes, I'm being abused at home because as a kid, you're like, okay, if I say, yes, I'm being abused, what happens? Like, do I go in the foster care system? Do I lose, the people in my family that I do love? Like, you don't know what happens. And so I said, no, I'm not being abused. And I didn't want the abuse to worsen by saying, I was being abused. And um, so she didn't suspect anything. And um,
We have to change this system. We have
yeah,
to change things because I am positive that that's how most young people. You were 14 when you attempted that suicide
suicide.
by pills?
Yes.
So you were that age. You were, you know, you're so traumatized. You're being abused by a whole bunch of different men in hotel rooms through this 39-year-old supposed, I'm your friend and I love you. And so 13 and now you're 14, now you tried to commit suicide, you're in a psych ward and everybody is like, "We're really unhappy with you
Yeah.
because, you know, why would you do this to the family?"
Yeah.
You're like and then they ask you they ask you that question,
Yeah.
like,
Like,
"Are you being abused?" And abuse victims are so scared.
yeah.
They can't tell, and like you said, you don't know what the outcome of saying yes or I mean, you don't know what that means if you say yes.
No.
Do you go home and the abuse gets worse? Are you taken into foster care? Do you lose, you had a grandma that you just loved and there were I mean, it's your family. Even if it's totally screwed up, it's still what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh,
yeah,
gotta make
it really does bother me because, like, I tell my therapist I have now, like, how do people not see the signs? Like,
yeah.
I was completely, like, detached from, like, the class. I was visibly depressed. I didn't really talk much. I, you know, was to me, I was very obviously depressed. And even like when I was a kid, I thought, maybe if I act sad enough, someone would notice and notice that
You know,
I need help. And that almost became like, my SOS sign to be just act depressed. And maybe someday someone will be like, what is wrong? And no one did though. And I not only blame my parents, I blame the system. I blame the people who allowed my parents to abuse me and enabled them. Like they knew who they are. My family's friends who like told, it's just all screwed up. And
they could see
yeah,
something was very wrong and still said nothing and
yes,
still did nothing.
so did
And
nothing.
that is so often the story. And I have to I have to say, I think that that is because if somebody actually, looks and sees, then they are responsible for doing something and people just don't want to do anything.
Exactly.
They're just cowards,
Yeah.
truly.
I came to the conclusion either A, they were benefiting from the abuse because they were able to manipulate me because I was small, or they were too afraid to say anything because of what my mom and stepfather were capable of. So that is what makes
You feel that they were capable of harming other people, other adults, and the other 2 children that were in the house, your sisters, younger and older, that they were capable of hurting them, so that was part of the fear that kept people quiet.
yes, my family is very cutting and very manipulative. Um, and just the world image is everything to us. So we promise image like happy go family, but in closed doors, it's trade wreck. Um, everyone's a mess. And as soon as you step out of line, you're squashed and put back in place. And like my mom would rage at people if she didn't get her way. Like, you know, public workers, like waitresses, people on the phone, someone messed up something and she would let them have it and just yell at them and literally be at those, if you watch those like horrific videos on Instagram about people, just yelling at, that's my mom. Um, and so
So family members and extended family members, people were basically afraid of her
yeah,
doing that. So that was another layer of, don't look, don't see, don't hear what's actually going on, and then we won't tell and we won't say anything because then it'll happen to us kind of thing.
yes,
However, however, those were other adults in your life.
yes,
Your older sister was approaching adulthood. Your younger sister, I can understand she would have been afraid and scared and not saying anything. She's still little. But you're 14, you've attempted suicide. You're in the psych hospital for a week. And they ask you if you're being abused, and you like no, because you're afraid to
yeah,
speak up. You don't know what that means. It's just such a vicious cycle.
yes.
And
And
and then
yeah,
your parents just used you being in the psych ward against you.
yes, where they would be like, where like if I, misbehaved or whatever, there would be like, oh, you don't want to go back to the psych ward, right? Because we'll send you right back. Because being in that psych ward was literally hell. Like you had like no rights at all. Woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure you weren't dead, to check your pulse, having to go to bed at like 8 o'clock at night and wake up at like 7 in the morning. Everything was controlled. You didn't get to see outside. Like it wasn't a fun place at all.
You were 14.
And I was
You
14.
were still like,
I was still a kid. And ironically, my suicide attempt was exactly a year from my grandfather's passing, and I was admitted to the same hospital where he died at.
Well, mm, was that the only suicide attempt during those years?
I attempted
More suicide ideation, I'm positive,
yes,
is going to happen, or was there any, you know?
I there was attempts where, my mom was yelling at me and I just grabbed a knife and threatened, to slit my wrist open, and she just told me, "You know what? Go ahead and do it because eventually people will stop remembering you." And, like, to me, I was just I just, literally ached at the floor, crying, and I didn't do it. But, I'm like, "You know what? She's right." Life would go on, and people would remember me after a while, and
And again, nobody would notice, just like you grew up
yeah,
not being noticed because you kept quiet, because when you were noticed, it was pain. There was physical, emotional abuse, and then the sexual abuse began because of course you're vulnerable, and this is what happens, this is how predators work. They find the most vulnerable and they try to fill the need of that vulnerable young person, that child, that little boy who was desperate for love and to be seen, and then they do the worst, thing that can happen to them. And now you're all mixed up. What is love? I don't even
I
know.
don't even
Now you
yeah,
Yeah, you don't even have a concept of that. So from 13 to 18, suicide ideation in a psych ward, that's used against you, all of those things. So by the age of 18,
yeah.
where were you? What had happened? What was next?
Uh,
Or what had happened to that point?
so before I get to 18, there are 2 things I would like to touch on. Um,
Yes.
so, um, when I was 16, I was dealing with severe body dysmorphia to the point where, I wouldn't look myself in the mirror because I didn't like what I saw. And so I used makeup as a way to, you know, cope. 'Cause I wanted to control the way I looked. I wanted, you know, it made me feel safe. I felt safe. My mom saw I had makeup on one time and I didn't take it off. And, she came up close to me and she said, "What the hell do you have on?" And I said, "Makeup." And she just starts crying and says, "Go take it off." And I'm like, "No." And she said, "Go take it off or I'll break your jaw." And I had to run to the bathroom, lock myself in the bathroom while I'm crying, wiping, using baby wipes to wipe this makeup on my face, you know, and having to stay there until it was finally, I didn't hear any more screaming. And like, yeah, it was terrible. And I got grounded for 2 weeks and just for trying to be myself. Um, so I couldn't self individuate at all. That wasn't allowed to. My mom was like, "Why are you wearing makeup?" I'm like, why do you wear makeup?" And she's like, "Because I'm a woman." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like, what's the difference?" And she was just like so done. Like, I don't know what to say. Um, I was she would tell me this awful things where you know, no one loves you or you need me more than I need you. If you don't like it, then leave. I'm like, what do you do to that? Like, I can't just leave the house. Like, I can't survive on, I don't have any wilderness expert skills. Like, I'm a kid. I'm dependent on my mom. So what do I do? I, I conform to what she wants and I act small and I stay in line and I, yeah. Um, my stepfather would yell at me to the point my ears would ring and just the man full of rage. And, um, my mom would tell me, "Oh, that's just how he shows his love." And it messes a kid up so much. And it's the same exact thing the guy told me when I was raped the first time, because I told him how bad it made me felt. And he said, "Oh, that's normal to have sex the first time. It's normal for it to hurt the first time." You know? So here again, it's these adults normalizing their abuse to make,
Yeah, telling you this is normal.
yeah,
It's not.
it's not at all normal at all. Um, there's something else to my story I would like, because I know a lot of guys face it, especially in the gay community, with the body dysmorphia. I would, you know, I was a swimmer a lot. I would be constantly, in a Speedo, like for, 3 hours in the day. We always compared each other. And I was like, well, again, I'm 15, 16, comparing myself to someone who's 18, a little bit more developed than I am. And like, why don't I have muscles like that? Like, if I had muscles like that, maybe, people would like me. And, um, yeah, I would compare myself to people on the internet, you know, who had bigger muscles and were quote unquote more attractive, which deemed by society as attractive. And it is so bad in the gay community. Whereas, if you don't have a six pack or biceps, you're not cutting it in the gay community. It is really bad. And eventually, slowly we're starting to get better with, act with, singers like Sam Smith sharing body positivity, but we still have a long way to go. Um, and there are so many men who don't feel enough in the gay community because they're either too skinny or they're too overweight or they're too feminine or they're too masculine or they're too whatever society doesn't think that they're good enough as. And it needs to stop because we are human beings and our flaws or whatever is what makes us beautiful. And makes us us. If we didn't have imperfections, we wouldn't be human.
You wouldn't be uniquely you.
Yeah.
And I think honestly that that's the biggest, um, kind of the drawback of not being able to communicate from a young age your feelings.
Yes.
I believe that the way I survived what happened to me is because I had 12 years where I was listened to. My parents listened to their 3 daughters. We had discussions about moving, and when I was probably 8, and Karen would have been 6, Susan maybe was 4 or 5, and they wanted to move into a different house in a different neighborhood. Maybe we were a little bit older than that, but I remember that we did not want to move. We loved our friends. We loved the Hoffmans, and we loved, the friends that were right up the street, Camille, Neto, and we had all these people that we as little girls loved, and we wanted to play with them, and we didn't wanna move, and we didn't move. We were literally listened to. So when I have other people say, "How did you survive?" I'm like, "Listen, how will any child survive is you have to, listen to them. Let them tell you how they feel. Let them be who they are and support that." And when you don't have that, like you had none of that, everything is confusing. Everything is a fight. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's okay. You don't know what's not okay. And you're just left, you know, to fend for yourself with all the wolves
Yeah.
who are ready to tear you apart.
And,
I'm
like, I was in the sixth grade once and I did report to the counselor, after we had, um, with the sex education and
I like the health
health
class
class.
in sixth grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, reported to them how like my parents were abusing me. I didn't say abuse. I didn't really have that language until maybe like a year and a half ago.
Right.
But like telling them concerning events that were happening at, you know, household. And so my mom, I was called in to the school. My stepfather wasn't allowed in the school. And my mom told me basically I was making the whole thing. And it's because David just got grounded from his video game, so he's making the whole thing up. And the counselor believed her. I was deemed as, this, someone is seeking for attention kid, and, the counselor never questioned anything, and because I didn't have any, bruises on me, I so, everything went.
Well, and we're
Yeah.
saying, Dave, we're young right now. You're still a young man in your 20s.
Yes.
And I think, oh my gosh, things have changed by now, haven't they? Don't counselors and therapists believe? I mean, no young person is saying things because they lost privileges for their video game.
No.
That's just not what's happening. And I wanted to believe that, oh, they believe you now. People believe that they believe you. They will do something about it. But it's not happening even now, which really is discouraging for me because I feel like, well, back in the 70s, they didn't, I mean, psychotherapy was just starting and nobody knew what a pedophile was and nobody had Oprah and there was all this, you know, lack of information and so obviously, but to hear you say that now, as a young man in your 20s that they didn't believe you, it just is so disgustingly depressing to me. Just how can that be?
I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand how my mom or my stepfather didn't realize that I was being sexually abused, having hickeys on my neck, and, you know, I don't know, they would find pictures on my phone that were, you know, questionable, and they never asked, "David, are you being, you know, molested? Are you being, hurt?" They never asked those questions. It was, "You're ruining the family image. You're gonna ruin everything for us. Your father's gonna lose security clearance. I'm gonna lose my job as a teacher, and you're gonna ruin everything, and it's all on you." And no one's listening to me. I am, you know people ask how I got through childhood. I honestly don't know. Like, I thought I would be dead in a ditch somewhere, or, you know, just I did not think I'd be alive today at all. And, you know
Well, the bravery that that you're showing by sharing your story in order to not only help yourself, I hope that this helps you to see how brave and courageous and amazing and what a miracle you are because you are here. You're not dead in a ditch. That's remarkable for what you've been through. And the fact that you were raped over 100 times by the age of 18 is, another miracle. And I just think when you have this many things stacked against you, the fact that you, of course, tried suicide the one time, had suicidal ideation multiple times through those years is is normal. And the fact that nobody ever asked you. I mean, yes, these kinds of abuses don't leave bruises, but they do show
Yeah.
if you're looking, and even if they don't show, but you're acting a little bit out of sorts or you ask people directly, you have to build this relationship with the young people in your life so that when you do ask sincerely with empathy, without them thinking you're going to freak out one way or the other, they can't manage your emotions. You gotta just be calm, steady, concerned, and listen, and ask the questions.
Yeah. It's I wanted to say, like, how did no one notice I was being abused at all? I would cry myself to sleep every night wishing I was dead because being alive hurt too much. And waking up the next day was just like, here we go again. Here we go again, being abused by mom, being told I'm not good enough, being, making Cinderella jokes at me, being molested by these older men who I think who loved me maybe, but hurt me. And, you know, he's like, I was, yeah, I was destroyed inside and out. And yeah, no one paid attention to me at all. And it enrages me because I had so many things that were robbed from me. So when I have friends who say, "Oh, yeah, my best friend is my mom or my dad," I don't have that ever. When Mother's Day or Father's Day or, you know, holiday that comes around that everyone needs to be happy with their family day comes around, I don't have that. Even my birthday, I dread my birthday happening because I'm like, here's the day I was born and everything started. Because I'm convinced my mom didn't, you know, love me. She wanted me for power, dominance, and control like every narcissist does. And when she didn't get that, she raged at me. And on top of that, I resembled my father, and she hated that. And so I received worse abuse. You know, my sister, my oldest sister, is the golden child. She can do no wrong no matter what she does, ever. Here I am trying to excel at school, having a learning disability, making straight A's, the honor roll, governor's seal, graduating, early. I get nothing. Here she flips a rock and, oh my gosh, you just did the world. I'm like, really? So, yeah,
So the relationship with your family now?
I am completely estranged from my family, and I don't see us having a relationship for the foreseeable future. There are things, when I was 19, I was eventually sent to college. I was barely holding it together in college, and I was still being raped. I have this voice in my head that says you have to obey these men, even though these guys are gone. You know, what they did to me is still very much there. I'm afraid to say no, like, because if I say no, like, are they gonna hurt me? Like, what they gonna do to me? So I've been instead of saying no, I just associate into a third world, and these men, rape me. And
In college.
in college, yes,
And I wanna make the point that now you're 19
yes,
and you're still being raped.
yes,
This is where people forget that when you've been groomed and when you have had your development arrested because of all the things that you've been through, you are not in a space where no one has supported any sort of you telling and talking and healing and getting help and all of that. That hasn't happened. And so age at this point is not a number.
yeah,
It's where you're at in your abused, shut down, little, small, quiet, just I'm too scared to say anything and I'll just do whatever I have to do, like you dissociated and went somewhere else and just let them do what they did. Not because you were willing, not because you wanted it, but because of what had happened to you. And I think people sometimes get very judgmental.
yes, especially in this day.
Age.
And how can a man be raped? They're strong. They wanted it. They get an erection. Like, it's a physiological response. Can't really control that.
That's right.
Um,
Absolutely.
yes. And so I was raped. Um, Towards the end of my story, I was raped again, and this guy this time stealthed me. Basically,
Well,
yes. So it's when you
like that.
stealthing is when you ask someone to put on a condom, but they don't, but make you believe they do anyway. It is a crime in the UK, but it's not a crime in the United States, which I think is it's rape. Um,
Ab 100%, and it should be a crime. That's what I'm putting that on my list of legislative change
yeah,
that we have to make. To stealth someone and say, "Yes, I put on the condom," and then didn't, and then they still
yes.
raped you
Yeah.
or had sex with you, whatever they wanna call it,
Yes.
that's a crime.
Yes. I never consented to have sex without a condom. And so some time passes by. I go and I want to go on prep. Like I've always wanted to go on prep because I'm definitely afraid of getting HIV. And I know what HIV does to you. I watched the movies of, I learned about the AIDS crisis in the 80s and I didn't want that to happen to me. And so I told my doctor, I really pushed her this time. I was like, I want to go on prep because originally she didn't want me to go to prep because it was bad for your liver or whatnot. But I wanted to go on prep. And so I got tested. This is my 3rd time being tested for STDs in my life. Um, I go get tested. I told her, I'm like, "There's not like, I know I'm negative, but, because I just got tested, like 8 months ago, and I am doing all these blood draws 'cause I'm on Accutane, and they have to measure all of, my vitals and whatnot, so they would know if there's a change in my body." So in my mind, I'm like, "I don't have it." She texts me one day, says, "Hey, David, can I come by the house?" And I'm like, "Well, that's strange." I'm like, "Yeah, I can come by the house." So she comes by the house. She asks me if anyone's home. I'm like, "Oh, oh crap." She sits me down and says, "David, you're gonna be okay. But there's something I need to tell you. Um, you tested positive for HIV." And I literally collapsed. I started hyperventilating. I blacked out. I almost vomited. I was like, "You're lying to me." Like, "No, like, that's impossible. Like, I've been getting blood done every 3 months because I'm on Accutane. Like, how did no one catch anything?" Like, she had to literally show me the piece of paper that said positive for HSV-1. And not only that, I was positive for Hep B and no, not Hep B, Hep C. And so, um, she says, "Do you wanna tell your mom?" In my head, my logical brain, I'm like, "No, don't tell her." But I just wanna be held by my mom and collapse in her arms. That's all I wanted to do. It was with a mother's love to say, "It's going to be okay." So I said, "Yes." My doctor tells my mom. She comes to the house, puts on this show, like, "It's gonna be okay, David." The first words I uttered out was, "Who will ever love me?" Because I have HIV. Now I have to tell everyone I have sex with, I have HIV. Even if I'm in a relationship, I have HIV. And, they're like, "Don't worry about that right now. We'll, take one thing at a time." And I had to get another blood test, make sure it wasn't a false test, which, I had to get tested 3 times because I didn't believe it. I got a self-test, and I also got tested, at LabCorp, and both times it came back positive, and I was like, "Okay." For 4 months straight, I lived in a dissociative state where I was waiting for someone to wake me up, waiting for my alarm clock to wake me up to go to "Oh, you're late to school," or wake me up from this it's like this out of body experience I have for 4 months straight. And at the same time, my mom's telling me now, "You're disgusting. Like, your sister can't get this because, she has too much on her plate and going for her right now. So you have to clean up everything you do because she can catch this." I'm like, "The only way she will catch this is if I have sex with her or if our 2 wounds come in contact." But no, I had to bleach everything I did, which made me feel even worse about myself. I felt radioactive. My stepfather was like, you know, "You effing pig. Like, you did this to yourself. Like, congratulations. You really did it." And, like, I, you know, I call my therapist, he's screaming at me. I lock myself on the 3rd floor. He's telling me to, like, open the 3rd floor, come out. I think he's trying to kill me, so I killed my therapist. My therapist is trying to calm everyone down. I don't feel safe at home. Uh,
So your therapist came, but you locked yourself on the 3rd floor of your house
yeah,
or in your
the
or
3rd floor of my
okay,
house, of my parents' house, call my therapist.
and you thought your stepdad was going to kill you
Yes.
or the therapist,
I thought
right?
my stepdad was trying to kill me.
Okay.
Um, and, you know, calling the therapist, her having to mediate the situation at 7 o'clock at night, everyone needs to chill. Eventually, she convinces me to open the 3rd floor, and I was very stubborn. I did not want to open that 3rd floor door for anything. I wanted that locked, and I unlock it, and he just gives me this, like, evil look at my face, like, "You were disgusting." And my sister tells me, "You broke the family," my eldest sister. Um, "Because of you, I was gonna move out of the house because I just couldn't take your misbehaving." Um, my mom tells me, "This affects me more than it'll ever affect you." I'm like, "How could you say that?" I'm like, "What?" I was like, I told her I would rather have cancer than HIV because at least I could do something about it. And I can't do anything about HIV. It's for the rest of my life. And she was like, "You do this to yourself. People who have cancer don't do that to themselves." And she was like, "One day when you're a parent, you will understand how much it affects you." And she goes ahead and tells my whole family without my consent, without the story of me being raped, "Oh, David just gets HIV." She tells my sister, she tells my uncle, she tells my grandma, and my grandma really was the kicker because one day I'm in my apartment building at this point. My mom calls me out of nowhere, and I'm like, she never calls me for anything, so I know it's bad. And, you know, she was like, "Oh, how's your day going?" And, try to be nice. I'm like, "What's going on? Like, what happened?" And she was like, "Oh, well, I told grandma that you have HIV." I was like, "What?" And she says it like she's pouring orange juice. I'm like, "What do you mean you told grandma that I have HIV? I wanted to do it on my own terms, and you didn't want me to tell her because of how she was going to react because she lived through the AIDS crisis." And she was like, "Well, grandma was really worried about me because I was really distressed. So I told her." She didn't tell the fact that she just got surgery done. She had to tell her that I had HIV. And so I called my grandma. The first thing she says to me is, "You go to college and this is what you do to yourself." And my heart shattered in 1,000 pieces because my grandma was my mom. She was the one person that actually probably prevented me from being a narcissist because I got some empathy from her. But, she was like, I tell her I was stealth, I was raped, and she was like, "You work out every day. Like, you couldn't defend yourself. Like, why did you put yourself in the situation? You should have known better." Like, I'm just so mad and upset with you right now. And I l yeah, I being told that you have HIV is like someone squeezing your soul, and a part of me that day died. And, I look at my life before I have HIV and after I have HIV, and there have been people, I've told I have HIV, who've said some nasty stuff about me and me trying to date and, I'm dirty and, you know, why couldn't you just put a condom on, you know, and it made it makes it very difficult trying to date. Um, and I eventually get into a series of relationships that are abusive. This one in particular, extreme narcissist. Um, he I know it's about sister relationships because 3 months in the relationship, we're looking at wedding rings. And yeah, and he's taking me all these fancy dinners, and but then, he's also abusing me and will cause these, like, mini, like, arguments and, like, bait me, and now he's screaming at me, and then he hangs the phone up on me just like my mom would do, and he knows my mom abused me, and he would do exactly what she did, and it felt like someone poured gasoline and lit it on fire, and he would block me on everything so I could not call him. And then 2 days later, he would unblock me and be like, "Hey, so sorry that happened. I'm bipolar, so, I have my moments." And I would, like, come running back to that, and that happened 8 times, but there was one time I was truly suicidal, and I was like, "My life is, like, it's a thousand pieces right now." Um, his friend, Rich, had eventually calms me down, and I go to his house, and he, tells me basically "F off." Um, Short story is we end up breaking up. He breaks up with me, but then he tells everyone on social media I have HIV to stay away from me because I am a danger to society. And at the time, I was not vocal about it. Maybe 4 people knew I had HIV, and now almost everyone in Richmond, because the gay community in Richmond's pretty small, knows I have HIV, and partially why I left Richmond. Coming to the end of my story now, for, a year, it took about a year for me to, like, finally come to terms with what happened, and, um, I try to look at the silver lining in it. I think that's what has helped me survive. Being, he was the last straw that caused me to wake up to the abuse because I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't. Um,
So how have you woken up to the abuse? What are you doing now after that, last terrible relationship and the suicide, attempt and ideation all coming back and my life is over. What's the point?
yeah.
What was it that started to turn the corner for you? I mean, you're here today telling your story because you want to help other people, because they'll see themselves in your story and they'll get the courage maybe to share theirs with someone or to go seek out help. What was that turning point and what are you doing?
So I found this lovely woman, Dr. Romney, and, she gave me the strength to save my life. And, I hope one day I can speak to her and tell her how much she's helped me because she's truly has been a mother to me from a distance. Um, and, because of her, I have a small background in psychology where I've taken multiple abnormal psych classes and personality classes and I know the DSM-5 and mm, it helps me navigate the world a little bit better.
Can you explain to our listeners what that is?
The DSM-5 is a diagnostic statistical manual, and it's the 5th edition, which is what we use now to make clinical diagnoses of people who might have um, mental health disorders or mental health illnesses. And
Narcissism is considered one of
yeah,
those. Yes, and there are various types of narcissism, which you did
yes,
mention earlier, but I didn't stop you because, sometimes you just can't stop at that moment. When someone's sharing their heart and their gut, and is all turned inside out, which is really remarkable that you are at that point to do that when you are still just young.
yeah,
Most people don't start talking about their abuse until they're, a lot of times for men, they never talk
yeah,
about it, right? And so this is really important
yeah,
that you've done this and that you turned that corner because of Dr. Ramani's show
yeah,
on YouTube
yes,
and because you could feel she helped you understand. And when we have understanding, and now that you've studied those psychology classes that have helped you to kind of have kind of a armchair degree in abnormal psych
Yeah.
and to understand the different disorders and mental health issues that people have, that actually helps you put things in their place and realize, oh, yeah, this wasn't my fault. I didn't do something wrong. I also can now name what happened to me. I can call it by its name. And of course, I have a very special place in my heart for Dr. Romani and felt very privileged to be on her show and to meet her and to have literally like a 6 hour long conversation with her once, on the show, before the show, after the show. And I can see, the beautiful um, person that she is genuine.
Yeah.
It's a genuine thing, and she really has shared things with the world that I think are helping people to navigate through their abuse and to understand even to understand their abuser.
Yes.
Because there's something about that too that allows you to take it off of your plate and place it back where it belongs, which is certainly not your fault.
No.
That sweet little 4-year-old boy who's now in early adulthood as a man, trying to navigate all of these years of what happened to you from that age through early puberty at 7, through suicide attempt at 13, 14, through that online predator who lived in your neighborhood and picked you up at midnight when you're 13 and rapes you for the first time, and to get through that pain and then to have others to be trafficked to other men and to not know, is this love? Do they love me? When they're penetrating me while I'm watching a cartoon? No, they don't. But for you, trying to figure out how do I find it? And then somebody to self you and to give you HIV and Hep C, which is, like you said, it's a lifelong. You can manage it. There's treatments now.
And I'm
So
I'm undetectable now for HIV, and my body's cleared Hep C, thankfully, so I don't deal with that. But I've been undetectable for HIV for about a little over 2 years now. While we're, closing up this chapter, um, I wanted to end, with, like, a last thing for me because I planned my escape from my family for a year, and that took so much courage and so much strength not to just tell it off. Um, but, one summer, it was last summer actually, and I told my friend, "I'm so miserable with my life. I hate it. I don't have friends. I Everyone knows here I'm HIV positive. I don't trust anyone. I can't keep living like this." And I told her, "I don't care how hard it's gonna take. I'm going to graduate next year from undergrad." And I took 49 credits within a year.
wow,
I took 7 credits in the summer while working part-time, while doing field work. I took 18 credits in the fall, 3 credits in the winter session, and 21 credits in the spring semester, and I graduated within 3 years, with a degree in environmental science in biology, while having a learning disability, and I did this and graduated with high honors, with magna cum laude, and, no one
it's amazing.
no one can take that away
That's it.
from me.
Absolutely not. You had the strength of a Goliath.
Yeah.
You were so strong, and to come through this with the accomplishments that you have now, just expressed, I just want you to know that I see you and I hear you and I believe you. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give to survivors of abuse and to those that are really trying to now thrive
Yes.
is the gift of believing them
Yeah.
and then supporting them in that journey of healing and in that journey of you going to school and to do those things really on your own. So as you planned your escape from your family, what did that entail? How did you How did you do
How
it?
did I do
What
it?
did you do?
Yeah, so I've been working with my therapist who is an absolute rock star. I love her to death for the past 3 years, and she's really also has helped me, really find myself in the world. Her name's, Doctor Maluki, um, and, she's truly a gift, and I'm so glad I've met her. She's definitely been a mother figure to me, but, I planned my escape by free rocking with my parents, attending things that I absolutely had to attend to, and, didn't attend to certain things, yell rocking, answering, "Oh, yes, no," and they kinda, started picking it up, like, "You're distancing yourself from the family." I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm just busy. I'm taking 49 credits a semester," which, wasn't a lie. Yeah, I'm really proud of myself, and, I'm still going through it today. I have CPTSD, I still deal with my eating disorder and body dysmorphia, and, I still have night terrors of, my parents trying to kill me and flashbacks, and yeah, so it's not like, I always say healing is a journey, it's not a destination, and
That's
I will be working on this for the rest of my life. I guarantee it, and, I'm at the point of my life where I'm starting to help other people, on my Instagram page, DJ Weeks underscore. They can find me on Instagram at DJ Weeks underscore, where I recognize that everyone has the privilege to access therapy or have that time. So I try to share my knowledge of human behavior, what I've learned through classes and through Dr. Ramani and other people on my on my platform, and give them tools that brain rocking and help them through their journey. I'm also writing a book right now called Surviving Childhood that I plan to publish next year, which I'm really looking forward to getting helping more
fantastic.
people.
So you're really helping people understand trauma, how it affects every part of our lives, and it starts with affecting our brain and how that, and that shuts down in certain ways, and certain pathways just, stay on a high alert, and we have to learn how to build
Awesome.
new neural pathways in your nervous system. And yeah, and spreading that awareness and educating people, because you're right, not everybody does have access to good therapists,
Yes.
whether it's a financial reasons or it's just because they can't find the right fit or the right person. It really is one of those things that I think sharing what you've learned, sharing your story, all of those things really do spread that awareness, education, and why, you feel the way you feel,
Yes.
you know?
That's
And I do
very
believe
important.
what you said is that you want to try to help other child abuse survivors feel seen and validated.
Yes.
And that is the that is my biggest thing that I believe could actually change the world, is when a peer, another survivor, and a peer to peer sees and understands and believes you and validates your experience. That can do more in a short amount of time to get you on that, or to move you ahead on the healing path, I think, than almost anything.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I can't wait to read your book.
Yes, I can't wait to have it out and published. Really looking forward to it. And I totally agree with
Surviving.
surviving childhood. And I totally agree with you. I think all, mental illnesses comes from adverse effects in childhood. And so many people don't understand, you know,
The connection.
connection and at all. And, everyone pretty much is on Instagram these days. So, I post a 30-second read on my Instagram story to help people. And, people can DM me if they have questions.
That's great. So you read from what you've written?
Yes.
Is that what you meant? At 30, that's
So,
great.
yeah, so, like,
I love
I
that. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that with my own book.
yeah,
I like that idea.
one little piece at
Interesting.
a time, and I also, like, just post stuff, like, what I said, what is trauma bonding and the psychological effects and the physiological effects? Because trauma is very much a physiological experience as much as it is as a mental experience, and it's
Exactly.
not something that people can just get over. It's it's not like you have
Mm.
the flu. It takes time, and even then, there are things that will be with people for the rest of their life.
Right, and they'll come back at a different stage in life in sort of a different way, and you gotta deal with it again,
Yes.
you know? They are with you, and it's almost like, everything that you collect along the road in life, some of those rocks that are in your knapsack that you're toting along, maybe you can take them out and discard them by the road and say goodbye, but some of them are just so tied to, who you are, that you're gonna have to keep carrying them, and you're gonna have to learn how to carry them
Yes.
differently, because they're not you can't just shake the bag out,
Yeah.
The baggage is, you know, there, and I do believe I do honestly believe people can heal
Yes.
enormously if they will tell their story and they'll reach for healing. I started my online community for that reason, which I hope you're going to be a part of my Thrivivors community, because when we hear from each other, from our peers who have also experienced these sorts of traumas and abuses, and we also hear from professionals that deal with this, most of the people that come on to Thrivivors and like give an event, or, they're therapists or detectives that are now, trauma informed teaching all over, to police officers, or they're various people, but they have almost all suffered
Yes.
their own child abuse. And that's what I'm always fascinated by, is that people can heal and they can go on to have really productive lives and to help others. But isn't it interesting that so many have come from abuse and come through that, and they know the pain, they know the trauma, the suffering, and they are willing to,
Yeah.
do what you're doing to
To
share.
break the cycle because my mom was abused too,
There,
and she was abused by her father, and, the it started with his mother who, abused him.
abused her father.
Yeah.
Her father was abused by his mother.
So, yeah, so my grandfather was abused by his mother, and then my grandfather abused my mother, and now my mother abused me, and, it's all generational cycles, and it's gonna stop with me, and, I want to help people. I told my friends that, like, I wanna turn my pain and my purpose, and I want something good to come out of this because I believe it can, and there's so many people who need help, and,
Yeah.
um, I just wanna give everyone a hug and tell them it's gonna be okay.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly, and there is an exchange, like, when you have, deep, pains and owies and hurts and abuses and so many things. I mean, you just have this huge pile, but you can exchange, like I said, you can drop the rock. There are ways to do certain things. I think you do exchange that pain for something else can replace it. I do think people can have more joy, more happiness, better relationships if they will join a community, follow you on Instagram, get educated, come to Thrivivors, help yourself by telling somebody that will believe you and then help you,
Yes.
just to get it out, just to get it out of the body and be able to study it like you're doing with your psychology stuff. It really
It
makes
really makes a
impact.
difference because
Different.
you're not, quote, unquote, "crazy," like people call it,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
like, you learn that there are words for it, and, I know how to tell the signs of, like, when someone's a narcissist or when someone has an antagonist personality or when someone's
When someone
trying to love bomb me,
what, sorry,
you know,
love bombing or
or
grooming.
grooming me.
That all grooming, all those things are either outcomes or names of grooming.
Yes.
Because people groom you in all those different ways, gaslighting you, love bombing you, controlling you through their narcissistic behaviors and the drama, the flip flop from, oh, I love you and come let's cuddle to, oh, I've discarded you. It's all part of that. For me, the big conversation is how do you recognize when somebody is doing those things so that you can know that it's not you and that you can avoid all of the harm or at least go get help for what's happened.
Yes.
Really truly stand for yourself, which is what you're doing. So I'm just really proud of you as a young person. I'm always saying if we could just get the young people to see these things sooner, to talk about them sooner, to know that they can heal and they can thrive and they can have lives that are really good.
Yes.
And they may have to divorce themselves from those
And it's not easy.
very hard.
And,
No, because then you feel really alone in the world, and yet you're not.
you're not.
That's why coming up to an online community can be so important because you're not alone.
Yes.
That, and that's what I'm loving about having started an online community is because it's just like, oh my gosh, people aren't alone. And I'm just about to do a retreat. And you want to know what the name of my retreat is?
I love
It's called Soul.
soul.
Okay. Soul Restoration, Exchanging Pain for Joy plus plus.
That's awesome.
So maybe it's not joy. Maybe right now you're just exchanging pain for rage and anger, but you're going to exchange your pain for some other things in your life. And so don't build an identity around your pain.
Yes.
Build an identity around how you can exchange that pain for something much, much, much better in your life.
Yes.
David, thank you so much. Is there anything left unsaid? This was an amazing two-part series for our podcast and our listeners. Thank you for sharing so honestly.
I would like to let listeners know, yes, I'm through the abuse, but I'm still very much grieving, so very much mental pain. And, it's not, like I said, it's not like you just jump out of it and all of a sudden you're better. It takes years, and the longer you've been in it, the longer it takes. And, I've had my innocence and youth stole from me. Like, I don't see myself as a young person. I act a lot older than my age, and I know myself a lot more than people my age do because of the experiences I've gone through. And I can't connect to people my age the same way they can connect to people their age. And, it's a real, one step at a time. Uh, and giving the best advice I can give someone is give yourself love and compassion because nothing ever comes from shaming yourself. And if you're angry, you're angry. If you're sad, you're sad. And it's just a feeling. And acknowledging that feeling
Feel the feeling.
and getting
Yes.
curious about those feelings to understand, why am I feeling angry? Why am I feeling sad? And try, did someone overstep my boundary? Did I overstep my boundary? Do I not feel safe in the situation? If something not sitting well with my nature, like getting at the root cause, I feel like our bodies tell us so much, but we just have to be willing to listen.
That is beautiful advice. Mic drop. And thank you so much, David, for all of that sharing. And we will put your Instagram handle and the name of your future book in our notes. And just thank you for being this courageous. And even though you don't feel young, you
Yeah.
are. And you're encouraging other young people to come forward sooner because got to get on that healing journey, which you're taking. And like you said, it's going to take a long time and a lot of trying different things to see what actually is working for you. And it might come back and you have to try something else or you go back into, therapy. And you just have to know that it's okay. That
And having
it's like brush.
Yes, and having to fight, those primal urges of wanting to go back into a love bombing relationship, wanting that so badly, but knowing it's so unhealthy for you. You know,
Yep.
it's a lot of, things you have to let go and not easy at all. And
No, because that can feel good for a minute,
Yes.
but when you know more, you can do better, and you know that, but that doesn't make it easy to do. It's like, yeah, I know how, like when you were, and like you said, you still are experiencing your anorexia nervosa. You are still experiencing, various things that are going to be long term things that you deal with on a day to day, minute by minute basis. But when we know better, we don't always do better because we either don't take the time, we don't spend the money, we just don't think we're worth it. And I just want to encourage people to spend the time, spend the money, do what you have to do to take care of you. Like you said, you
You're
are
worth it.
the only
Yeah.
person and you're worth it. You're the only person that can do this work and this journey.
Yes.
Nobody can do it for
Alone.
you.
And
So you're great.
that's the hardest part. No one can do it for you. You have to do it, on your own terms. And if you don't do it on your own terms, it's not going to work.
Absolutely. That's the truth.
Yes.
So thank you again, David. And I just hope that you're going to do something enjoyable for the rest of your evening. I know it's late where you are, but after going through that much, that was a lot, and I don't want you to be stuck in a painful place. What do you do now to relax and to quiet your mind? I'm sure it's hard.
Um, I I find that finding things that are nostalgic is really good for combating anxiety and um, depression. It's recommended by a lot of therapists to find something nostalgic. It's the fastest thing that can pull you out of an episode. I find solidarity really peaceful now. I used to hate it because I'd be, isolated in my home of the castle. And now I'm just like, I just want to be alone. And, listening to Dr. Romney at night, hearing her voice, I listen to her once a night every day. And I really think it's important to give, even if it's 15 minutes back to yourself, because it helps you in those small steps turn to a big step, which turn to another step.
When you said something of nostalgia, do you mean like music from the past, from a long time ago? Is that what you mean, nostalgia?
Nostalgia, like if you hear something that, like a song that has a good memory tied to it, or, a TV show that reminds you of like that warm, ooey gooey, feeling, it really can just help, you know, snap out of those, because when you're having those, it's your vagus nerve being activated and you want to calm that.
Um,
Uh,
yes.
so yes.
I like that. I like that description. Do something that's nostalgic, I like that idea. I used to tell people, read yourself the storybooks that nobody ever read to
Yes.
you. You read them now as an adult to yourself and be the character to your little and give back to your small person what you didn't get. And I like the idea of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like, go back and watch I Dream of Jeannie
Yeah.
or whatever, Th those are my day. I must but if I had something of nostalgia, it would be like watch Partridge Family and remember all those songs that they sang because I used to know the words to all of them and they would come back to me. Do something of nostalgia that will raise your tone, the way you're feeling. It will give you that kinda sense of well-being, and do that for 15 minutes every day. I love
Yeah.
that. What a wonderful way to end. So, go do your nostalgic thing. I'm gonna go do mine, and thank you again for being on podcast and being a guest and sharing your story so
Thank
courageously.
you.